Elena Soto had always been the only one to treat that invisible old man with respect. But when lawyers and security guards showed up at the restaurant, asking to speak with him, she discovered a truth capable of destroying anyone. Elena Soto saw the three men in suits enter the small restaurant, accompanied by security. Her heart raced. They walked with the authority of those accustomed to being obeyed, and their eyes searched for someone specific in the room. Elena didn't know it yet, but her life was about to change forever. For 2 years, she had served meals to an elderly gentleman who came in alone every afternoon, always ordering the same dish, always sitting at the same table by the window. The man was polite, spoke little, but there was something in his eyes that revealed a deep sadness. Elena always treated him with special kindness, noticing the details others ignored. The way his hands trembled holding the fork, the way he looked out the window as if waiting for someone who would never arrive. Loneliness emanated from him like an invisible cloud. That rainy Thursday afternoon, everything began to unravel when a group of young men entered the restaurant making excessive noise. They were clearly intoxicated, laughing loudly, pushing chairs, and disturbing the other customers. Elena tried to calm them down, but they completely ignored her. That's when one of them deliberately bumped into the old man's table, knocking over his glass of water and laughing at the situation. The gentleman didn't react, just lowered his head, perhaps accustomed to being invisible to the world, but Elena couldn't stay silent. She marched over to the young men's table with a determination that surprised even herself. "Are you going to behave, or are you going to have to leave?" she said in a firm voice. The young men laughed at her, one of them making disrespectful comments about her appearance and her job. That's when the unthinkable happened. The leader of the group, a tall young man in an expensive shirt, stepped forward and pushed Elena's shoulder hard, causing her to stumble. Before she could fall, the elderly man was on his feet, moving with surprising speed for someone his age. He held Elena's arm, steadying her, and then turned to the young man with an expression Elena had never seen before. There was authority in that gaze, contained power, something that made the arrogant youth instinctively take a step back. "Apologize to her," the old man said in a low voice that cut through the air like a sharp blade. The young man hesitated, clearly unnerved by the shift in dynamic. His friends fell silent, sensing that something in the atmosphere had changed. "Who do you think you are, old man?" the young man finally replied, trying to regain his bravado, but his voice perceptibly trembled. Before the situation could escalate further, the restaurant manager rushed over, sweating and visibly nervous. He looked at the old man, then at the youths, and his expression changed significantly. "You," he pointed at the group of young men. "Leave immediately or I'm calling the police." The firmness in his voice was undeniable. The young men started to protest, but the manager did not yield. They finally left, grumbling empty threats, leaving the restaurant in a tense silence. Elena was trembling, not from fear, but from adrenaline. The old man returned to his table as if nothing had happened, but Elena noticed that his hands were shaking more than usual. She brought him a fresh glass of water and sat in the chair opposite him, something she had never done before. "Thank you for defending me," she said softly. He shook his head slowly. "You defended yourself. I was just there." In that moment, Elena felt a deep connection with that mysterious man, a sense that their lives were intertwined in a way she didn't yet understand. What neither of them knew was that someone had filmed the entire incident, and the video was about to go viral, changing everything. Now, tell me which city you are watching this from. Leave your comments. I love knowing where the people who follow these incredible stories are. 3 days after the incident, Elena was cleaning tables when her cell phone began to vibrate incessantly. Messages from friends, acquaintances, and even people she barely knew flooded her screen. "What's going on?" she muttered, opening the first link she received. Her blood ran cold when she saw the video. Someone had filmed the whole scene in the restaurant, the push, the old man's defense, everything. But that's not what shocked her. It was the comments, thousands of them. "That's Ricardo Vidal," one said. "The billionaire Ricardo Vidal defending a waitress," wrote another. "It can't be him," someone argued. "Ricardo, Vidal has been reclusive for years since his wife died. Elena sank heavily into a chair, the cell phone trembling in her hands. Ricardo Vidal. She knew that name. Everyone knew it. He was the founder of Vidal and Corporations, a real estate empire that had built half the city's skyscrapers. His fortune was estimated at billions of Rs, and he was known for his philanthropy before completely disappearing from public life years ago, exactly when the old man started frequenting the restaurant. It can't be, Elena whispered to herself. But the more she looked at old photos of Ricardo Vidal in the news, the more she saw the resemblance. The same aristocratic nose, the same penetrating eyes, just older, more tired, carrying the weight of an invisible pain. The restaurant phone rang, and the manager answered, his expression changing with every second. When he hung up, he was pale as a ghost. "Elena, we need to talk," he said in a tense voice. She followed him to the small back office, her heart pounding fast. "What happened?" The manager ran his hand over his face, clearly disturbed. "That gentleman you always serve, the one by the window table. He's been identified. His legal team was on the phone." "Who is he really?" Elena asked, although she already knew the answer. "Ricardo Vidal, one of the richest men in the country. And apparently, he's been coming here for years without anyone realizing it." The manager looked at her with a strange expression. "They want to speak. With you. With me? Why?" He didn't say. But they're sending someone tomorrow morning. Elena slept poorly that night. Her mind spun with possibilities, each one more far-fetched than the last. Why would a billionaire frequent a simple restaurant like hers? Why did no one recognize him for 2 years? And why now, after the video went viral, was his legal team getting in touch? The next morning, Elena arrived at the restaurant an hour early. She wore her best uniform, having ironed it 3 times to ensure there wasn't a single wrinkle. Her hands sweated as she repeatedly organized the tables, unable to stand still. At exactly 8 o'clock, a black BMW pulled up in front of the restaurant. 3 people got out, 2 men and a woman, all dressed in suits that probably cost more than Elena earned in 6 months. They entered with serious, professional expressions, their eyes evaluating everything around them. "Elena Soto?" the woman asked, extending her hand. "I'm Abogada Laura Reyes, counsel for Mr. Ricardo Vidal." Elena shook her hand, feeling the firm grip. "Pleased to meet you. We need to discuss Mr. Vidal and yourself." The lawyer gestured toward a table. "Can you sit down?" Elena obeyed, her legs visibly trembling. The 2 men stood, clearly security guards, their eyes constantly scanning the environment. "Mr. Vidal asked us to come here to explain a few things," Abogada Reyes began, opening a leather folder. "First, he wants to thank you for your kindness over these 2 years. He told us you were the only person who treated him with dignity and respect, without wanting anything in return." "I was just doing my job," Elena murmured, feeling her cheeks flush. "No." The lawyer shook her head. "You did much more than that. Mr. Vidal told us. You always remembered how he liked his tea. You noticed when he was particularly sad and brought him an extra dessert without charging. You sat with him when the restaurant was empty and just talked. These small gestures meant everything to a man who lost his wife and found himself completely alone." Elena felt tears prick her eyes. "He always seemed so lonely. I just wanted him to know someone cared." "Exactly." Abogada Reyes smiled slightly. "And that's why he wants to do something for you." She slid a thick envelope across the table. "This is a job offer." Elena looked at the envelope as if it were a poisonous snake. "Job as Director of Community Relations for the Isabel and Ricardo Vidal Foundation. Starting salary over $20,000 per month, with all benefits included, health insurance, dental, private pension." Elena's world stopped. Her $20,000 was more than 10 times what she currently earned. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Why would he do this?" "Because Mr. Vidal sees something rare in you," Abogada Reyes explained. "Sincere empathy, compassion without an agenda. He wants to create a foundation dedicated to helping the invisible people of society, the abandoned elderly, the lonely, those whom society has forgotten." And he wants you to lead that initiative. Elena couldn't process what she was hearing. This can't be real. It's very real. One of the security guards spoke for the first time. Mr. Vidal rarely changes his mind once he's decided something. But I don't. I have the qualifications, Elena protested. I barely finished high school. I've worked as a waitress cleaner since I was 16. You have something more important than degrees, Abogado Reyes replied. You have heart, and Mr. Vidal is willing to pay for all the education you need. Courses, university, specialized training, everything. Elena looked at the envelope, her mind reeling. Part of her wanted to grab it and run before they discovered it was a mistake. Another part was terrified of the responsibility. Can I think about it? She finally asked. Of course, Abogado Reyes nodded. But there's something else you need to know. Her expression became more serious. Mr. Vidal is ill. Terminal cancer. The doctors give him a year at most. Probably less. The floor seemed to disappear beneath Elena. She spent the next 2 hours talking with Ricardo Vidal's team. They explained his vision for the foundation, the available resources, the impact it could have. The numbers were too impressive to fully comprehend. Millions of REAs dedicated just to the first year of operation. But Elena could barely concentrate. All she could think about was the lonely man who came to the restaurant every day, the tremor in his hands, the weight on his shoulders that she now understood was both physical and emotional. He was dying, and for 2 years, she had been his only source of honest human connection. I want to talk to him, Elena finally said. Before I make any decision, I need to speak with Mr. Vidal personally. Abogado Reyes exchanged glances with security. That can be arranged. In fact, he asked to see you. He's waiting at home now. They offered to take her immediately, but Elena insisted on finishing her shift first. She couldn't just abandon the restaurant. No. Matter what was happening, it was a matter of responsibility, of honoring her commitments. This attitude only confirmed to Abogado Reyes that Ricardo Vidal had chosen the right person. At 6 o'clock that evening, Elena found herself in the back seat of the black BMW crossing the city toward the most exclusive neighborhood. The houses grew larger, the walls higher, the gardens more elaborate. They finally stopped in front of an iron gate with gold detailing. A security guard verified their identities, and the gate slowly opened, revealing a winding driveway through meticulously maintained gardens. The mansion at the end of the driveway took Elena's breath away. It was a 3-story construction with white columns and wide balconies. Enormous windows reflected the setting sun, making the entire place glow. This is where he lives, Elena whispered, more to herself. He lived here with his wife Isabel for 30 years, Abogado Reyes replied gently. After she died, he couldn't stay here anymore. Too much silence, too many memories. That's why he started frequenting public places, looking for life, looking for connection. They entered through the main door, and Elena found herself in an entryway that looked like it belonged in a museum. White marble covered the floor, a crystal chandelier hung from the high ceiling. Very expensive-looking paintings decorated the walls. But despite all the opulence, there was a coldness in the air, a sense of emptiness that made Elena shiver. A house too big for just one person, a wealth that couldn't buy company. They were guided down silent corridors until they reached an immense library. Mahogany shelves reached the double-height ceiling, filled with books that probably hadn't been read in years. In the center of the room, sitting in a leather armchair near a window, was Ricardo Vidal. He stood when Elena entered, moving with the same dignity she always observed, but now she could see the effort each movement cost him. "Elena," he said, and his voice carried a warmth she had never heard before. "Thank you for coming." The legal team discreetly withdrew, closing the doors behind them and leaving the two alone. Elena stood, suddenly shy, not knowing how to act. The whole dynamic had changed. This was no longer the kind customer at the restaurant. This was one of the most powerful men in the country. "Please sit down." Ricardo gestured to the armchair opposite his. "You must be full of questions." Elena sat on the edge of the chair, her hands nervously clasped in her lap. "Why did you never tell me who you were?" "Because for the first time in decades, someone saw me as just a human being," Ricardo answered. Simply, you didn't know about my money, my company, my influence. You just saw an old, lonely man who needed a little kindness. Do you know how rare that is? Elena shook her head, unable to speak. When my wife Isabel died, Ricardo continued, looking out the window, I realized something terrible. Everyone in my life was there out of interest. My executives wanted to keep their jobs. My business friends wanted connections. Even my own children. He paused. The pain was evident in his voice. Only called when they needed money. I have 3, 2 sons and a daughter. None of them came to their mother's funeral. They were too busy with their own lives, their own ambitions. That's when I realized I had built an empire, but I lost my family in the process. The words hung heavy in the air. Elena felt tears in her eyes, imagining the pain of losing a partner and discovering that her own children didn't care enough to attend the funeral. I started wandering the city, Ricardo continued, looking for places where no one knew me, where I could be invisible. And then I found your restaurant. You welcomed me with a genuine smile. You treated me with dignity. You remembered how I liked my tea after the second time I went there. They were small things, but they were everything. I was just doing my job, Elena murmured. No, you were being human, and you reminded me that there is still goodness in the world. Ricardo leaned forward, his hands trembling slightly as he picked up an envelope from a side table. I am dying, Elena. The cancer is in an advanced stage, a year at most, probably less. And I've spent the last few months thinking about the legacy I want to leave. I don't want to be remembered just as the man who built buildings. I want my life to have meaning beyond money. He handed the envelope to her. Open it. With trembling hands, Elena opened the envelope and took out several documents. Her eyes widened as she processed what she was reading. This is... Her voice failed. A check for $500,000, Ricardo completed. For you, not as payment, but as a gift from someone you made feel human again. I can't accept this, Elena said automatically, trying to return the check. It's too much money. It's already deposited in an account I opened in your name, Ricardo said gently. The money is yours. It doesn't matter if you accept the position at the foundation or not. There are no conditions, no expectations. It is simply a thank you. Elena looked at the check. $500,000 was more money than she would see in a lifetime of working at the restaurant. She could pay off all her debts, buy a house, secure her future, but something didn't fit. Why me? She said. Her voice was little more than a whisper. Of all the people in the world, why choose a waitress cleaner with no formal education, no experience, nothing special? Ricardo smiled, a sad but genuine smile. Because you remind me of her, Isabel. His expression became distant, lost in memories. She was also a waitress when we met. I had just inherited my father's company. I was full of ambition and arrogance. I walked into a small cafe, and she served me with a smile that brightened my whole day. I went back every day for 3 months before I had the courage to ask her out. Elena listened, fascinated, watching this powerful man transform into something more vulnerable, more human, as he talked about his lost wife. She taught me that a person's true worth is not in what they possess, but in how they treat others, Ricardo continued. When we built our fortune, she never changed. She always treated the doorman with the same respect as she treated company presidents. She always remembered the names of the employees, asked about their families, cared genuinely. You remind me so much of her, Elena. Tears streamed freely down Elena's face now. And the foundation, he said. It would be Isabel's dream come true. Ricardo picked up another document from the table. Isabel always wanted to create something that would help the invisible people of society. The elderly abandoned in nursing homes, the homeless person everyone pretends not to see, the people working 2 or 3 jobs just to survive, but still treated as invisible. She started a plan, but then the cancer came so fast, so cruel. 3 months from diagnosis to death. His voice broke. On her deathbed, she made me promise to fulfill her dream, but I was a coward. I plunged into work, used grief as an excuse, until I found you. You showed me it was still possible. that there were still people like Isabel in the world, people who care without a hidden agenda. Elena looked at the documents in her hands, feeling the weight of the responsibility. I don't know if I can do this. What if I fail? What if I disappoint you in her memory? Then you will have tried, Ricardo said simply, which is more than I did for 2 years. Look, I'm not demanding you do this alone. We will hire a complete team, experts in nonprofit management, social workers, administrators. You will have all the support you need, but I need someone at the center of it all who truly understands what matters, someone who understands what it means to be invisible. The words resonated with Elena. She knew exactly what it was like to be invisible. How many times did customers ignore her completely, talking over her as if she wasn't there, treating her like furniture instead of a person? How many times did she feel small, insignificant, just another cog in the machine? Can I think about it? She finally asked. How much time do you need? Ricardo smiled. Abogada Reyes would probably kill me for saying this, but there's no rush. He laughed humorlessly. Well, maybe a little rush considering my situation, but I don't want you to feel pressured. This is too big a decision to make lightly. Thank you, Elena whispered, for seeing me, for trusting me, for this unbelievable opportunity. They talked for 2 more hours. Ricardo shared stories of Isabel, how they built their lives together, the mistakes they made in sparing their children from the pursuit of professional success. Elena listened, fascinated, glimpsing a world so different from hers, but discovering that in the end, pain was pain. Loneliness was loneliness, no matter how many zeros were in your bank account. When it was finally time to leave, Ricardo accompanied her to the door. There's one more thing you should know, he said hesitantly. The lawyers will come for your answer eventually, but my children will too. Elena stopped, confused. My children. When they find out about the check and the foundation, they will come after you. They will try to frighten you, perhaps even threaten you legally. They think every penny of mine should go to them, even though I've already set up trust funds that will keep them comfortable for the rest of their lives. Ricardo's expression hardened. If they show up, don't be intimidated. You have every legal right. Abogada Reyes made sure of that. But most importantly, you have something they will never have. What? My respect, my admiration, my love. I dare say, like the love I would have for a daughter if my own children hadn't made things so strange for me. Elena felt emotion tightening her throat. I won't let you down, she promised. No matter what happens, I won't let them destroy Isabel's dream. Ricardo nodded, and for the first time since she entered that mansion, Elena saw sincere peace in his eyes. I know you won't. That's why I chose you. The BMW took her back across the city, but Elena barely noticed the passing scenery. Her mind spun with everything that had happened, everything she had learned. 24 hours ago, she was just a waitress, cleaner. Now she held in her hands the power to change lives, to fulfill a dead woman's dream, to give meaning to a dying man's last months. It was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. When she arrived at her small apartment, Elena sat on the bed and finally let everything process. She cried for the injustice of good people like Ricardo and Isabel suffering while their own children abandoned them. She cried for all the invisible people in the world who just wanted to be seen. And she cried for herself, for the scared girl who wasn't sure if she was strong enough for the task ahead. But then she thought of Ricardo, sitting alone in his huge mansion, slowly dying. His only comfort the memories of a lost wife and the few hours a week in a simple restaurant where someone treated him like a human. She thought of Isabel, a waitress like her who married a billionaire but never lost her humanity, who dreamed of helping the invisible but died before fulfilling that dream. And she thought of all the people out there, working thanklessly, struggling to survive, invisible to a society that only valued success and money. People exactly like her. She couldn't fail them. She wouldn't fail. Elena picked up the phone and called the number Abogada Reyes had left. The lawyer answered on the second ring. I accept, Elena said, her voice firm despite her trembling hands. I want to do this. I want to create the foundation. There was a Moment of silence on the other end. Then Elena heard something that sounded like a crack in Abogado Reyes's normally controlled voice. He will be so happy. When can we start? Tomorrow morning, if you wish. I'll send a car at 8 o'clock. We'll prepare contracts, discuss details, start assembling. The team. I'll be ready, Elena promised. Abogado Reyes, can I ask one thing? Of course. You've known him for a long time. 25 years. I was Isabel's personal lawyer. I also saw their love, what they built together, and I saw how he fell apart when she died. There was a pause. You are giving him something to live for again, Elena. Even if it's only for a few more months, that is a gift beyond any value. After hanging up, Elena felt a little stronger. Sylvia was right. She couldn't control what Ricardo's children said about her, but she could control her actions. She could prove, through hard work and real results, that all of this had merit. The following week passed in a whirlwind of activity. Elena spent every day at Vidal Incorporation's offices, meeting the team Ricardo was assembling for the foundation. There was Dr. Eduardo Torres, a social worker with 30 years of experience, who would be the program director. Sylvia Robles, a former marketing executive for a large corporation who left the corporate world to work with social causes, leading communications and fundraising. Miguel Perez, an accountant specializing in nonprofit organizations, managing the finances, and a dozen other professionals, each an expert in their field, all committed to Isabel's vision. Elena initially felt completely out of place among all these educated and experienced people. They used terms she didn't understand, referenced concepts that were beyond her experience, but slowly she began to realize something. While they understood the mechanics of managing a foundation, they lacked something essential. They lacked the visceral connection to the people they were trying to help. During a particularly intense meeting about community outreach strategies, Elena finally spoke. Excuse me for interrupting, but can I make an observation? Everyone turned to look at her. Dr. Torres nodded encouragingly. Of course, Elena, your perspective is valuable. You are talking about partnering with existing shelters, which is great, but you're missing the main point. The people who need help most don't even reach the shelters. They have pride, shame. They are the elderly living alone in small apartments, afraid to ask for help because they don't want to be a burden. They are the workers doing 3 jobs who don't have time to apply for assistance. They are the invisible people you pass on the street every day without truly seeing. The room fell silent. Sylvia leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with interest. Continue. When I worked in the restaurant, Elena said, gaining confidence. I saw these people every day. The woman who ordered only soup because it was all she could afford, but I knew it was probably her only meal of the day. The man who always came in with worn but impeccably clean clothes, clearly striving to maintain dignity despite barely surviving. These people would never go to a shelter or seek official assistance. They need someone to meet them where they are. Dr. Torres was taking frantic notes. That's brilliant. Mobile community outreach teams integrated into everyday places, restaurants, laundromats, small markets. Exactly, Elena said. And not just handing out flyers. Building real relationships. Isabel understood that. She knew that sometimes what people need most isn't money or food, but to know that someone sees them, that someone cares. The dynamic in the room changed at that moment. Elena still had a lot to learn about administration and policy, but she had something equally important, the perspective of someone who had lived in the world they were trying to help. In the following days, her confidence grew. She contributed more to the meetings, her ideas shaping the direction of the foundation in ways that amazed even her. But then, one Friday afternoon, everything changed. Elena was in the temporary office that had been set up for her, reviewing proposals for permanent foundation headquarters when the secretary hurried to the door. There are 3 people here demanding to see you, the secretary said nervously. They said they are family of Mr. Vidal and won't leave until they speak. With you. Elena's stomach sank. She knew this moment would come, but she hadn't expected it so soon. Send them in, she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. 3 people entered the office, and hostility radiated from them like heat from summer asphalt. 2 men and a woman, all in. Their 40s, dressed in clearly expensive clothes but worn with the sloppiness of those who have always had too much money. The woman, tall and thin with platinum blonde hair, spoke first. "So you're the gold digger who's stealing from our father." Elena straightened up, forcing her legs not to tremble. "My name is Elena Soto. I assume you are Mr. Vidal's children." "I am Gabriel Vidal," the taller man said with a tone that suggested it should impress her. "This is my brother, Marcos Vidal, and our sister, Valeria Vidal. And you are a waitress who somehow convinced our senile father to give you 500,000 reais and control over a foundation." "Your father is not senile," Elena replied calmly, though her heart pounded like a drum. "He is completely lucid and made this decision consciously." "Of course he did," Valeria said with venomous sarcasm. "An 82-year-old man with terminal cancer is clearly capable of making solid financial decisions, especially when a manipulative young woman is whispering in his ear." "I never manipulated your father," Elena said, feeling anger beginning to boil beneath the fear. "I didn't even know who he was until last week." "Oh, please," Marcos rolled his eyes. "Do you really expect us to believe that? A poor little waitress who coincidentally befriended one of the richest men in the country without knowing who he was. That's so absurd it's an insult." "It's true," Elena insisted, "and your father can confirm it." "Our father," Gabriel said coldly, "is clearly not thinking straight. The cancer, the pain medication, the prolonged grief over our mother, all of this affected his judgment. That's why we are initiating legal proceedings to have his power of attorney revoked." Elena felt her blood run cold. "You can't do that." "We can. And we will," Valeria said with a cruel smile. "We have 3 psychiatrists ready to testify that our father is not in sound mental condition. We will have control of his finances until his death, at which point the inheritance will be distributed among his legitimate heirs, not opportunistic exploiters." "I am not an exploiter," Elena said, her voice rising despite her efforts to stay calm. "Your father offered me this because he wants to create something meaningful, something that honors Isabel's memory." "Don't you dare speak our mother's name!" Gabriel stepped forward threateningly. "You didn't know her. You have no right to invoke her memory to cover up your theft." "I didn't know her," Elena focused. "But I know her dream because your father told me. She wanted to help invisible people, people like me, and he is fulfilling that dream because the 3 of you clearly don't care about anything but money." "How dare you!" Valeria spat. "We care about our father. We are protecting him from a predator who is taking advantage of his vulnerability." "Protecting him?" Elena laughed without humor. "When was the last time any of you visited him? When was the last time you called just to ask how he was? He told me you didn't even show up at Isabel's funeral." The silence that followed was heavy and revealing. Finally, Marcos spoke, his voice low and dangerous. "Our relationship with our father is none of your business. What is our business is stopping a swindler from manipulating him into taking what is rightfully ours." "You already have trust funds," Elena said. "Your father told me. You are financially secure for the rest of your lives." "That's not the point," Gabriel said. "The point is that every cent he gives to you or that ridiculous foundation is 1 cent less for his real family." The office door opened abruptly, and abogada Laura Reyes entered, her expression furious. Mr. Vidal, Ms. Vidal, the 3 of you need to leave immediately or I will call security." "Ah, Daddy's favorite lawyer," Valeria said scornfully. "You're part of the problem, Laura, siding with exploiters instead of protecting your client's interests." "My client," Abogada Reyes said in a voice of steel, "is making clear decisions about how he wants his estate to be used, decisions that were verified by multiple medical professionals as being made in full. Mental capacity. If you proceed with this frivolous legal action, you will not only lose but will also ensure that your father disinherits you completely." "He wouldn't do that," Marcos said, but there was uncertainty in his voice. "He's already considering it," Abogada Reyes replied. "He called me this morning, aware that you were planning this little intimidation visit. He instructed me to revise his will. Continue down this path and the 3 of you might find that the trust funds you value so much can be reallocated." "That's illegal," Gabriel protested. It is not. The funds were established by Mr. Vidal himself, and he retains the right to alter them as he wishes. Abogada Reyes crossed her arms. Now, I suggest you leave before this situation worsens for you. The three siblings exchanged glances, clearly not expecting this resistance. Finally, Valeria turned to Elena, her eyes full of pure venom. This isn't over. We'll expose you for what you really are. We'll destroy your credibility so completely that no one will believe a word you say. Do what you feel necessary, Elena replied calmly, surprising herself with the firmness in her own voice. But I will not give up on the dream your father and mother shared, no matter what you do to me. After they left, Elena collapsed into her chair, shaking. Abogada Reyes placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. You handled that well. You didn't let them intimidate you. I'm terrified, Elena admitted. Are they really going to try to take his power of attorney? They will try, Abogada Reyes said, but they won't succeed. Ricardo predicted exactly this. He was examined by 5 different psychiatrists last month. They all agreed he is in perfect mental health. He also recorded video depositions, explaining his reasons for every decision. We've built a legal fortress around him. But can they make things difficult? Oh, they'll certainly try. Abogada Reyes sighed. Prepare for media attacks, maybe even defamation lawsuits. They have money and connections. They'll use them. Elena looked out the window at the city below. Millions of people living their lives, many of them invisible, many of them struggling exactly as she had struggled. Then I'll have to be stronger, she said quietly. For them, and for Ricardo and Isabel. That evening, Elena visited Ricardo at his mansion. He was visibly weaker than the week before, the cancer advancing relentlessly, but his eyes still sparkled with intelligence and determination. My children came to see you today, he said. It wasn't a question. Yes, Elena sat down beside him. They made threats, said they will question your mental capacity. Ricardo nodded sadly. Of course they will. It's what they always do when they don't get what they want. Intimidate, threaten, use the legal system as a weapon. They learned too well how the business world works, but completely forgot how to be decent human beings. I'm so sorry, Elena said. I feel like I'm causing trouble between you and your family. No, Ricardo shook his head vehemently. They caused that years ago when they decided I was just a source of money, not a father. You, Elena, gave me something they never did. Purpose, meaning, a reason to fight for every day I have left. He took her hand, his fingers trembling, but the grip surprisingly strong. Promise me something. No matter what happens, no matter what they say about you or do to frighten you, don't give up on the foundation. Don't give up on Isabel's dream. These people, the invisible ones, need someone who truly understands, someone who has been where they are. I promise, Elena said, tears streaming down her face. I won't let you down or her. Ricardo closed his eyes, exhausted but peaceful. I know you won't. That's why I chose you. You have something money can't buy, a heart that genuinely cares. They sat in silence for a long time, just holding hands. Two spirits connected by an unlikely situation, but a shared purpose. Neither based on blood, but on something deeper, mutual respect, shared values, the kind of family bond that is chosen, not given. Finally, Ricardo spoke again, his voice weaker. There's one more thing I need to tell you, something only Abogada Reyes knows. The documents you signed aren't just for the foundation and the check. He opened his eyes, looking directly at her. I also named you as my executor of the will. When I die, you will have control over how my, estate is distributed. Elena felt the floor disappear beneath her. What? But your children. They will inherit exactly what they deserve, Ricardo said firmly. The trust funds they already have, which are more than enough. The rest, the vast majority of my fortune, will go to the foundation to ensure it can operate for decades, helping millions of people. This will destroy them, Elena whispered. They will hate me even more. They already hate you, Elena. And frankly, I don't care about their feelings. They had a lifetime to build a relationship with me, to show they cared about something other than money. They chose not to. But I don't want to be responsible for breaking up a family. They broke up on their own, Ricardo said sadly. You are just responsible for ensuring that something good comes of everything I built, something that would have made Isabel proud. When Elena finally left the mansion late that night, her head spun. Executor of the will, control over billions of reais. The responsibility was overwhelming, terrifying, but she also knew Ricardo trusted her for a reason. Because she wouldn't be corrupted by the money, because she understood that every real represented an opportunity to change a life. In the following week, exactly as Abogada Reyes predicted, the war began. Gabriel, Marcos, and Valeria launched a public relations campaign against Elena. Articles were published in tabloids, questioning her motives, insinuating she had seduced a vulnerable elderly man. Photos of her at the restaurant were published with captions hinting at inappropriate behavior. Online forums exploded with speculation and accusations. Elena tried to ignore it, but it was impossible. Colleagues from the restaurant called her confused and worried. Neighbors looked at her suspiciously in the street. Strangers recognized her and made cruel comments. The pressure was unbearable. One night, she collapsed onto the sofa in her small apartment, sobbing uncontrollably. Her phone rang and she almost ignored it, but saw it was Sylvia from the foundation team. "Elena, are you okay?" Sylvia asked with sincere concern. "No," Elena admitted between sobs. "I'm not okay. I don't know if I can do this. The media, the lies, people hating me without even knowing me." "Listen," Sylvia said firmly. "I worked in corporate marketing for 15 years. I've seen smear campaigns before. I know how brutal it can be, but I also know something else. That the truth always wins eventually, and we have the truth on our side." Ricardo documented everything. His lucidity, his reasons, his vision. When the time is right, we will counterattack with facts, not insinuations and lies. But what if no one believes? Some people never will, Sylvia admitted. But the right people will, the people who matter most. And when the foundation starts working, when lives start to change, no one will be able to deny the impact. Elena took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. "You're right. I need to focus on the work, not the noise." "Exactly. And Elena, one more thing. The entire team is with you. We've seen how much you care, how every decision you make is about helping people, not about yourself. Don't let them destroy that." After hanging up, Elena felt a little stronger. Sylvia was right. She couldn't control what Ricardo's children said about her, but she could control her actions. She could prove through hard work and real results that all of this had merit. 2 months later, the Isabel and Ricardo Vidal Foundation officially opened its doors. Elena had insisted on naming the foundation after both of them, acknowledging that the dream belonged to both, not just one. The opening ceremony was intentionally modest. She didn't want pomp and circumstance, but something meaningful. 50 people were present, most of whom were the foundation's first beneficiaries. There were elderly people who had been connected with health services and social programs. There were single mothers who received assistance with childcare and job training. There were low-income workers who gained access to continuing education and financial planning. Each one had a story, and every story mattered. Ricardo was there, though he could barely stand. He insisted on coming against medical advice. He sat in a wheelchair at the front, his eyes shining with tears as he watched his and Isabel's dream finally come true. Elena gave a short speech. She spoke about invisibility, about how society often ignored those who most needed to be seen. About Isabel, a waitress who married a billionaire but never lost her humanity. And she spoke about Ricardo, a man who built an empire but discovered that true legacy was not in buildings but in changed lives. But the most powerful part of the ceremony came when the beneficiaries themselves spoke. A 78-year-old woman named Doña Carmen told how she had lived alone for 10 years since her husband died. Her own children were too busy to visit her. She fell into severe depression, stopping eating and caring for herself. Then, a foundation social worker found her at a local market, noticed the signs, made the connection. Now she had regular medical checkups, participated in a social group for the elderly, and, for the first time in years, felt her life had purpose again. A 50-year-old man named Javier spoke about working 3 different shifts just to pay rent for a tiny apartment shared with 5 other people. He never had the time or money to improve his skills, trapped in a cycle of minimum-wage jobs with no prospect of advancement. The foundation connected him with free vocational training in information technology. Now, he had a job with a decent salary and, for the first time in his life, hope for a better future. Story after story, each a testament to the impact that targeted resources could have when combined with genuine care. When the ceremony ended, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Ricardo asked to speak with Elena privately. She pushed him in his wheelchair to a quiet corner. "Thank you," he sighed. His voice was weak but conveyed emotion. "For making this happen. For making Isabel's dream real." "You made it real too," Elena said. "Without you, none of this would be possible." "I am dying, Elena," Ricardo said, without mincing words. "The doctors say I have 2 weeks at most. Maybe less." Elena felt tears well up in her eyes. "Don't say that. It's the truth, and I need you to be prepared." He took her hand. "When I go, my children will intensify their attacks. They will fight the will with everything they have. It will be ugly and brutal." "I know," Elena said. "Abogada Reyes prepared me." "But will you be ready emotionally?" Ricardo asked. "It's one thing to know intellectually that someone is going to die. It's another thing to experience that loss." "You've become a father to me," Elena admitted, tears streaming freely now. "In these few months, you taught me so much about dignity, about purpose, about using privilege for good. I don't want to lose you." "And you were the daughter I always wanted," Ricardo said, his own voice cracking. "Who cares about the right things? Who sees people, not just opportunities? Isabel would have loved you." They sat like that for a long time, just holding hands. An old man dying and a young woman finding strength she never knew she had. Connected by an unlikely connection but genuine love. Neither based on blood, but on something deeper. Mutual respect, shared values, the kind of family bond that is chosen, not given. Ricardo Vidal died peacefully in his sleep 3 weeks after the foundation's opening. Elena was by his side when he passed, holding his hand, whispering that he was loved, that his legacy would continue, that Isabel would be waiting for him. His last breath was peaceful, a slight smile on his lips. The funeral was a study in contrasts. On one side, Gabriel, Marcos, and Valeria, with their partners and children, dressed in expensive black but with expressions of thinly veiled anger rather than genuine grief. On the other side, hundreds of ordinary people, employees Ricardo had treated with respect, foundation beneficiaries whose lives he changed, people like Elena whom he saw when no one else did. The priest gave a generic sermon, but it was when people were invited to share memories that Ricardo's true nature emerged. Doña Carmen told how he personally visited one of the social gatherings for the elderly that the foundation organized, sitting and talking with each person, making everyone feel important. Javier spoke about how Ricardo attended his first presentation after finishing the programming course, congratulating him with tears in his eyes. Story after story of a man who could have remained distant and removed, but chose to personally involve himself in the lives he was changing. When it was Elena's turn to speak, she walked to the pulpit. With trembling legs, she looked at the crowd, saw the clear division between those who had loved Ricardo for who he was and those who had only seen him as a source of wealth. "Ricardo Vidal gave me a chance when no one else would have," she began, her voice gaining strength. "Not because I was educated or experienced, but because he saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. He taught me that a person's true worth is not in their resume or bank account, but in how they treat other human beings." She addressed the 3 children directly. "He also taught me about regret, about spending a lifetime building something impressive, but realizing too late that he had neglected the people who should matter most. He carried that pain until his last day." Valeria stood up abruptly, her face red with rage. "How dare you lecture us about our own father?" "Because someone needs to," Elena replied calmly. Because he deserved children who loved him for who he was, not for what he had. And because his last wish was for me to ensure that his legacy was about love and service, not about greed and selfishness. Valeria stormed out, her brothers following behind. Half of their relatives went with them, but significantly some stayed, perhaps ashamed by the behavior, perhaps finally recognizing some truth in Elena's words. After the funeral, Abogada Reyes read the will. As Ricardo had predicted, the children immediately contested it. They alleged undue influence, mental incompetence, every legal argument they could muster. But Ricardo had been meticulous. Every decision documented, every medical examination recorded, every conversation video recorded, where he explained clearly and lucidly his reasons. The legal battle lasted 8 exhaustive months. During that time, Elena kept the foundation running, despite the constant attempts by Ricardo's children to freeze funds and block transactions. The media was fascinated by the story, some painting her as the opportunistic villain, others as the unexpected heroine, defending the downtrodden. Finally, the court delivered its decision. The judge, a 60-year-old woman with an implacable conviction for justice, was direct. I have extensively reviewed all documents, all testimonies, and all evidence presented, she said, and my conclusion is unequivocal. Ricardo Vidal was in full possession of his mental faculties when he made his will. His decisions, although they may disappoint his biological children, were made deliberately and with careful consideration. She looked directly at Gabriel, Marcos, and Valeria. Messrs. Vidal, Ms. Vidal, you have been generously provided for by your father throughout your lives. The trust funds left to you ensure comfortable financial security. The fact that you do not inherit the entirety of his estate is his decision to make, not yours to contest. Then she turned to Elena. Ms. Soto is confirmed as the executor of the will. The Isabel and Ricardo. Vidal Foundation will receive the majority of the estate as specified, approximately 2,400,000,000 reis. Elena felt the world spin. She knew intellectually that it would be a large sum, but hearing the actual number was staggering. The judge continued, I see no evidence of manipulation or inappropriate behavior. I see a young woman who showed kindness to a lonely elderly man, and he, in return, entrusted her with his legacy. Case closed. As they left the courtroom, Gabriel intercepted Elena in the hallway. This is not over, he hissed. We will destroy you. We will destroy this ridiculous foundation. We will ensure that every cent you touch turns to poison. Do what you need to do, Elena replied calmly. But know this, every attack you make against me, every lie you spread, every obstacle you place, only makes me more determined. Your father entrusted me with his dream. I will not fail him. 5 years passed since Ricardo Vidal's death. The Isabel and Ricardo Vidal Foundation grew exponentially. What started as a modest operation now had branches in 12 different cities. Thousands of lives were changed directly. Abandoned elderly people, reconnected with communities. Single mothers received support to build sustainable careers. Low-income workers accessed education and opportunities that transformed entire life trajectories. Elena, now 28, sat in her office on the 10th floor of the foundation's main building. She completed her bachelor's degree in social work, followed by a master's in nonprofit administration. But more important than the diplomas was the accumulated experience from 5 years of hard work, mistakes made, and lessons learned. There was a special event scheduled for today, the 5th anniversary of Ricardo's death and of the foundation. Elena was nervous in a way she hadn't felt in years, because today, for the first time in 5 years, Valeria Vidal had requested a meeting. When Valeria entered the office, Elena barely recognized her. The brittle arrogance was gone, replaced by something softer, more broken. She wore simple clothes, no flashy jewelry, and there was a humility in her posture that hadn't been there before. Thank you for seeing me, Valeria said calmly, sitting in the chair across from Elena's desk. Of course, Elena replied cautiously. What can I do for you? Valeria looked at her hands in her up. I wanted to apologize for everything, for how I treated you, The terrible things I said, the efforts to destroy you and your foundation. Elena waited, letting the silence stretch. The last few years have been humbling, Valeria continued. My marriage fell apart. My brothers stopped speaking to me after it became clear we lost the legal battle. I spent so much time and energy hating you that I forgot to live my own life. I'm sorry for your difficulties, Elena said sincerely. But you should feel justified, Valeria said bitterly. I was terrible to you. I deserve everything. That happened. No one deserves to suffer, Elena replied gently. And I don't feel justified. I feel sad for the lost time, for the relationship you could have had with your father if things had been different. Valeria finally looked up, tears streaming down her face. I wasted time. I focused so much on money that I forgot to simply love him. And now he's gone, and I can never make amends. No, you can't, Elena focused. But you can honor him now. You can choose to live differently from here on. That's why I'm here. Valeria took a deep breath. I want to volunteer at the foundation, not in a leadership position. I don't want power or recognition. I just want to help somehow. I want to do something that would have made my father proud. Elena studied the woman in front of her. Part of her wanted to reject the request immediately, to protect the foundation from potential sabotage. But another part, the part Ricardo had nurtured, saw a broken person seeking redemption. And wasn't the foundation's mission to help people? Exactly. There's a program we're starting, Elena said slowly. Intergenerational reconnection. We connect young adults with isolated elderly people, creating grandparent-grandchild-like relationships for those who don't have close family. Valeria nodded, listening attentively. It needs coordinators who can relate to both the young people and the elderly, who understand the importance of these relationships because they experienced what happens when they are neglected. Elena paused. Would you be interested? Yes, Valeria said immediately. Yes, absolutely. It won't be easy, Elena warned. It will require training. It will require humility to learn from people who may have less formal education than you. It will require confronting your own actions repeatedly. I know, Valeria said. And I'm ready. Or at least I want to be ready. Then welcome to the foundation. Elena extended her hand. Let's honor your father together. Valeria took her hand, shaking it firmly, tears of gratitude and regret streaming freely. Thank you. Thank you for giving me a chance when I didn't deserve it. Your father gave me a chance when I didn't know I deserved it, Elena said. It's the least I can do to pass that on. In the following months, Valeria proved to be one of the most dedicated volunteers. She connected particularly well with wealthy elderly people who were abandoned by their own families because she understood that dynamic viscerally. Her genuine regret resonated with them, and she often shared her own story as a warning to others about not taking family for granted. Gradually, Gabriel and Marcos also began to soften. They never apologized directly, but they stopped the public attacks. Marcos even made a modest donation to the foundation, anonymous but traced by Abogada Reyes. It was a start. The foundation grew year after year. On the 10th anniversary of Ricardo's death, they had impacted more than 50,000 lives. Directly, with ripple effects touching tens of thousands more. Elena's story became an inspiration, the waitress cleaner who inherited billions and used every cent for social good. But for Elena, it was never about the story or the recognition. It was about the elderly woman she visited last week, living alone, but now connected with a support network that ensured she was never invisible again. It was about the young father she met yesterday, finally able to provide for his family through vocational training that the foundation had sponsored. It was about the small restaurant where everything began, where she still had lunch occasionally, remembering where she came from. One afternoon, 10 years after Ricardo's death, Elena was in that same restaurant, sitting at the table where Ricardo used to sit. The place had changed owners again, but the table remained, almost a sanctuary for locals who knew the story. A young waitress, no more than 19 years old, came to the table. "Hello, welcome. Can I take your order?" Elena looked up and saw something familiar in the girl's eyes. The exhaustion of too many hours, the worry of mounting bills, but also the dignity of someone refusing to give. Up. What is your name? Elena asked gently. Sophia, the girl admitted. Are you in school? Trying, the girl admitted. I take night courses when I can, but it's hard to work full-time and study. Elena took a card from her purse. This is my card. I run a foundation that helps people exactly in your situation. Scholarships, job training, support while you build a better future. Sophia looked at the card, her eyes widening. You're Elena Soto. I read about you. You used to work here. I used to, Elena acknowledged. And someone gave me a chance when I needed it most. Now I want to do the same for others. Tears filled Sophia's eyes. I don't know what to say. Say you'll call, Elena replied. Say you'll let us help you, because you deserve to be seen, Sophia. You deserve to have your struggles recognized and supported. I will call, Sophia promised. Thank you so much. As Elena left the restaurant later, she looked up at the clear blue sky. She felt the presence of Ricardo and Isabel, almost as if they were there with her, smiling with approval. She had kept her promise, she had honored their legacy, and most importantly, she had created something that would continue far beyond her own life, a cascade of hope that multiplied infinitely. That night, Elena wrote in her journal, something she did religiously since Ricardo's death. Dear Ricardo, today I met a girl who reminded me of who I was 10 years ago. Scared but determined, working hard but barely. Surviving. I'm going to help her the same way you helped me. I'm going to see her when she feels invisible because you taught me that's what legacy really means. Not monuments or buildings with your name, but changed lives. One at a time, creating ripples that extend forever. The foundation now helps thousands, but I'll never forget that it started with one lonely man in a restaurant and a waitress who refused to let him be invisible. Thank you for seeing me, Ricardo. Thank you for trusting me with your dream. I promise to keep making you and Isabel proud every day for the rest of my life. She closed the journal and looked at the framed photo on her desk. Ricardo and Isabel, young, radiant with love and hope. Next to it was another photo taken at the foundation's opening. Ricardo in his wheelchair, Elena by his side, both smiling through tears as they witnessed the dream. Coming true. Elena gently touched the photo. Good night, she whispered, until tomorrow when we will continue your work. And in the quiet of her office, surrounded by evidence of thousands of changed lives, Elena Soto, a waitress who defended an abandoned elderly man and discovered he was one of the richest men in the country, knew with absolute certainty that she had found her purpose. Not because of the money or the power she now possessed, but because of the simple yet profound lesson Ricardo had taught her. Everyone deserves to be seen. Everyone deserves dignity. And sometimes all someone needs is for one person to care enough to notice they exist. That was the true legacy of Ricardo Vidal. Not the billions in his bank account, not the skyscrapers he built, but the understanding that the greatest wealth of all is the ability to make a difference in another human being's life. And Elena would spend the rest of her life ensuring that wealth was shared generously, one invisible person at a time, until everyone was seen, everyone was valued, everyone knew they mattered. It was an impossible mission on a global scale, but perfectly possible one life at a time. And that was enough. It was more than enough.